The jar sat on the corner of the old wooden table, simple and clear, with a metal lid that had lost its shine over the years. At first glance, it looked like any other jar you might find in a kitchen. Nothing special, nothing magical. Yet for Arman, that jar would quietly change the way he saw his entire life. Arman was in his early 30s, but he felt much older. Every morning felt heavy. He woke up tired, even after a full night's sleep. His days passed in a blur of responsibilities, small failures, and unanswered questions. He worked at a job he once dreamed of, but now barely tolerated. The excitement he had felt in his younger days had slowly faded, replaced by routine and silent disappointment. One evening, after a long and frustrating day, Arman visited his grandfather. The old man lived alone in a small house at the edge of town, surrounded by plants and silence. Arman often came here when life felt too loud. His grandfather did not talk much, but when he did, his words stayed with you. That evening, Arman found his grandfather sitting at the table, cleaning the same old jar. He was wiping it carefully, as if it was something precious. Why do you keep that jar? Arman asked casually, dropping into the chair across from him. His grandfather smiled but did not answer right away. He placed the jar in the center of the table and looked at Arman with calm eyes. Tell me, he said, what do you see? A jar, Arman replied. An empty one, his grandfather nodded slowly. Yes, empty. That's how most people see it. He stood up and walked to a shelf. From there he picked up a handful of large stones and gently dropped them into the jar. One by one, they made a solid sound as they settled. He pushed the jar toward Arman. Is it full now? Arman looked at it carefully. The stones reached the top. Yes, he said. It's full. His grandfather smiled again, the kind of smile that suggested there was more coming. He went back to the shelf and returned with a small bowl of pebbles. Slowly, he poured them into the jar. The pebbles slipped into the gaps between the stones. Now? The old man asked. Arman hesitated, then nodded. Now it's full. Without saying a word, his grandfather brought a small cup of sand and poured it into the jar. The sand filled the tiny spaces that the pebbles could not. The jar was completely full now. Nothing more could fit. Arman leaned back, a little confused. I don't understand, he said. What does this have to do with anything? His grandfather sat down across from him. This jar, he said softly, is your life. Arman looked at the jar again. It was still just a jar to him. The stones, his grandfather continued, are the most important things in your life. Your health, your family, your inner peace. The things that truly matter. Arman felt a quiet stir inside his chest. The pebbles, the old man said, are the important but smaller things. Your job, your money, your achievements, they matter, but they are not everything. He paused for a moment, then tapped the jar lightly. And the sand, he said, is all the small stuff. The worries that don't matter in the long run. The endless scrolling, the comparisons, the anger over small things, the noise. Arman listened carefully, his eyes fixed on the jar. If you fill your life first with sand, his grandfather went on, there will be no room for the stones, no space for what truly matters. The room fell quiet. Arman thought about his own days, how much time he spent worrying about things that never really changed his life, how often he ignored his health, his peace, his family, while chasing deadlines and approval. But my jar already feels full, Arman said quietly. I don't have time for anything else. His grandfather looked at him with gentle seriousness. Your jar feels full because it is filled in the wrong order. That night, Arman returned home with the image of the jar stuck in his mind. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying his grandfather's words. For the first time in a long while, he felt something shift inside him. The next morning, Arman woke up earlier than usual. Instead of checking his phone, he sat quietly by the window. The sky was slowly changing color as the sun rose. He realized he could not remember the last time he had watched a sunrise. That day, he decided to make small changes. Nothing dramatic, just small shifts. He started by taking care of his health. He began walking every morning, even if only for 20 minutes. At first it felt uncomfortable. His body resisted, but slowly, the walks became something he looked forward to. His thoughts felt lighter. His breathing felt deeper. He also started calling his parents more often, not long calls, just simple conversations. He listened instead of rushing. He laughed more. At work, things did not suddenly become perfect. Deadlines were still there. Pressure still existed. But Armand noticed something different. He stopped letting work define his entire worth. When mistakes happened, he learned instead of blaming himself endlessly. One evening. Weeks later, Armand returned to his grandfather's house. The old man was again sitting at the table, the jar in front of him. Armand smiled. I think I understand now, he said. His grandfather raised an eyebrow. Do you? Armand picked up the jar and held it in his hands. I spent years filling my life with sand, he said, and I kept wondering why I felt empty. His grandfather nodded, satisfied. Life, however, did not suddenly become easy. Some days Armand slipped back into old habits. He worried too much. He got angry over small things. He forgot his walks. But now, he noticed when it happened, and noticing was the beginning of change. Months passed. One afternoon, Armand faced a big decision at work. A promotion was offered to him, but it came with longer hours, constant stress, and no time for anything else. The old Armand would have accepted without thinking. It looked like success that evening. He visited his grandfather again. They sat quietly for a while. Then Armand spoke. I'm scared, he admitted. If I say no, I feel like I'm wasting my life. If I say yes, I feel like I'm losing it. His grandfather did not answer right away. He simply pushed the jar toward Armand. Armand looked at it. The stones, the pebbles, the sand. He finally understood that life was not about fitting everything in. It was about choosing what deserved space. A few days later, Armand made his choice. It was not the choice others expected, but it was the one that allowed his stones to remain where they belonged. Years later, Armand became the one who told the story of the jar. Sometimes to friends, sometimes to younger colleagues who felt lost, sometimes to himself, on days when life tried to pull him back into noise. The jar never changed. It stayed simple and clear. But every time Armand looked at it, he was reminded that life was not about how full it looked from the outside, but about what it was filled with first. And once you truly understand the jar, you realize something quietly powerful. You were never out of time. You were just filling your life in the wrong order.